So what's the deal with Biden's first-time home buyer tax credit?
Yeah, because I ask that all the time.
I know, that's what I asked. I'm just like, it's all the rage, I'm just saying.
Well, it's coming, maybe, so it's been proposed, so we thought we would try and break this thing down and talk about what it might mean for you if you're going to take advantage of it and how that might impact the market.
And keep in mind that this video is being made before either of these two potential bills have been passed.
There's two?
Sorry, I totally gave away the surprise.
Well, it's kind of two, if I may. There's one is just part of the new tax law, and then there's another part that's like a distinct act, and we'll talk about each of those. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you're hearing, or if you don't like it but you find it at least interesting, make sure you hit the little like button. We love it when you hit the little bell so you hear about new videos from us, and the subscribe button makes us so happy.
It does. That's the best button.
It's the best button.
Hey, I'm John.
And I am Elise, and we're with the Heart of Austin Homes team, and you guessed it, Austin.
Texas.
And again, we're going to mention, what these tax credits / grants are, whether or not you qualify, and what the heck is the difference between a tax credit and a grant.
Yeah, without having to go into accountancy.
So John, what the heck is this thing?
Okay, well, there's two parts, right? They're both haven't been passed. One is just part of the new tax code, right? Like you get a deduction off your taxes for interest that you pay on your mortgage, like that's part of the tax code. So this would be a new addition to that tax code.
Okay.
And then there's another part of it, which is a grant, which is
Okay.
like, hey, if you qualify under certain special circumstances, the government's gonna give you money to help you buy a home.
Wow,
Yeah.
that sounds cool.
Yeah, well, like cool and not cool. It's got pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Right, so let's tackle them one at a time and then we'll talk
Definitely,
about
okay,
the
tax
grants.
credit. Tell me about that one.
Okay, so the tax credit's got lots of different parts to it. Well, tell me the first one on the list there, since
Okay, first
the
one on the
papers
list
over
is
there.
that it's going to be a refundable tax credit up to 10% of the purchase price, or up to $15K of the purchase of the home.
Okay.
So in other words, it can't go above 10% and it can't go above $15K, whichever one is the smaller of
Which
those
means
two.
in Austin it's going to be $15K.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the median price around here is around
Exactly.
500, 550.
Yeah, exactly. Assuming your median home price is 150K or higher,
Yep.
10% is going to be more, so it's going to be 15K total.
Yeah, and now this is a credit that you get on your taxes. So in theory, if you qualify, when you go to buy a home, you can think like, okay, well, if I'm putting 20% down, let's call that $100,000, then at the end of the year when you file your taxes, you will get $15,000 off of your tax bill.
So if you're filing jointly with your spouse, significant other, et cetera, you each get $7,500, adds up to $15,000, right? But if you're filing single, then you still get that full $15,000. So that's cool.
So before you get married, each buy a house. Both get the
Use the
15K
credit. Oh no.
then get married. Technically, totally legit.
Totally
according to the
legit.
tax code, right?
Except that you have to live in it for a certain period of time.
You do. Well, you might have to
What if
become neighbors.
you don't actually move in together? You just buy houses near each other.
You could.
Who does that?
Well, I mean, we could jump ahead a bit to if you have to give the money back in certain circumstances. So you have to
Definitely.
live there for 4 years. And so if you leave or sell before 4 years, you have to pay back 25, 50, 75% depending on when you sell.
So after the first year, you'd only pay back 75. After the second year, you'd only pay back 50, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You get it.
And you qualify if you make 160% or less of the median income in your area. So like for Austin, last time we checked, that was 71,000.
It was 71, 72,000, but that number's about a year old, so
Yeah.
it's probably more than that by now.
So it's roughly like 105, 110. And obviously you'd want to check this for your area in the most recent statistics. But that's a decent chunk of change.
Yeah, well, what I like about this is that when it comes down to the actual buy-sell transaction, when people are putting in offers, they're not getting an extra chunk of money from the government, right? They're still having to use their own dollars. So it would be less inflationary, in my opinion. Whereas like, hey, if the government's just handing out checks to buy houses, then it just adds that to the price of every house. Because
Definitely.
everyone's gonna assume like, hey, the government's giving first-time home buyers an extra 15K, so I'm just gonna make my price 15K higher.
Definitely. And the home price has to not exceed 110% of the median home price in the area as well. So right now, that would put that around $600K for Austin, but obviously that's gonna likely to continue to grow and gonna change over time.
Well, so that's also something else about this new tax code is it is inflationary in the sense that it will adjust every year. So it might be 15,000 this year if it passes, and next year it could be 17,000 or whatever they decide it should be.
Definitely. And one of the funny things about it, and this is something we talked about, pros and cons, right, is that it's meant to help people get into these new crazy house prices. So first-time home buyers have a chance because, I mean, how many first-time home buyers do we know that are fighting that battle, right? Or just have said, you know what, never mind, I can. Which they might be able to, but still. But on the other hand, it may actually cause higher prices on those lower priced homes because now these people are going to have this extra credit. So it could, honestly, the market could just adjust for it.
It could, and I think it very well will. I mean, like that's always the case. Whenever government tries to step in, the market always adjusts around it.
Yeah, it's
so
funny.
It's going to be hard to see what happens. I mean, it was certainly inflationary, but I like the fact that it's not cash up front.
Yeah, the market's kind of, sometimes it's like this unruly kid who just has opinions of its own.
It's like water, right?
Yeah.
It just finds the easiest path.
Yeah.
Right? So if there's a workaround, then the water will flow that way.
Definitely. And, a couple stipulations, you have to be 18 or older. If you're 17 and trying to figure out how to buy a house, like props to you. I just want to say that up front. Also, you have to be a first-time home buyer. And what does that actually mean?
Well, so in this case, it only means you haven't bought a home within the last 3 years. So if you sold a home 3 years ago and you don't own any property, then you qualify.
Yeah, definitely. If you haven't owned a home for the last 3 years, right? Yeah.
Which is pretty, that's very liberal.
Yeah, definitely. And you're going to be able to claim this by having a copy of your closed settlement statement from buying your house and giving that to your tax person or submitting it with your taxes to be able to get that credit.
Yes, you'll need that closing statement and you just submit it with your taxes.
Definitely. And one of the things that really stood out to me is that they're going to make this retroactive theoretically back to December 31st of last year.
2020.
Yeah.
So which is weird. You would think it would be the 1st of 2021.
No.
But it says so in the bill, December 31st, 2020.
So as long as you bought it December 31st or later, you could have bought it on the 31st. If you found a title company that was open on New Year's Eve, props to you.
Yeah, there might be one out there, I'm sure.
They exist. I think I actually closed something on New Year's Eve this last year.
So we'll see. It would be retroactively applied. So that's kind of fun, right?
Definitely. And let's see, we talked about the recapture period. We talked about December 31st. But yeah, I mean, I guess the last point on that one is that it's not approved yet. And then we're going based off of what the bill says so far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any particular opinion one way or the other. I get the intention behind what they're trying to do. So like, hey, we want more people to be able to buy houses. We know that there's a housing crisis nationwide.
Yeah.
Let's help people who can't afford to buy.
And I mean, good on them for the intention, right?
Well, the road to hell is paved with them, right? And it doesn't apply to everyone.
Yeah.
So that's nice too, because if it applied to everybody, that would be more inflationary, which would defeat the purpose.
Definitely. I mean, and how many people, again, do we know that we would love to get into houses, and it's just such a stretch. So, I mean, this really does make my heart happy, and it just makes my head go like, ooh, I hope that works out the way they mean it to.
It's so funny. It's like the liberal bleeding heart, like, oh, I want you to help, and then like the mind's like, oh, this could be bad.
And I'm hoping it's not. Like,
yeah.
I really do think it could go either way because the majority of people aren't going to be using that. I don't believe because they're not going to be able to prove that they haven't owned a house. In the last 3 years. But there's a huge portion of the population that would like to get into a house, so this will really help. So, what's that grant, John?
Well, before we talk about the grant, this also makes me think about like the Clinton administration, and they wanted to get people into houses too, but instead of doing grants and rebates, they said, hey, lenders, you have to lend to people who aren't lendable, right? And so that created the whole credit crisis and collapse.
Definitely. Well, but this one doesn't have people with super low credit scores. Like you have to qualify in and of themselves.
Still have to qualify on the loan, so you get the benefit after the fact. So in that case, I think it's better because it doesn't create that crisis. Instead, it's inflationary.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you get the whole aspect of one of the reasons that they don't allow sellers, agents, random other people to help you with your down payment is they want proof that you can afford
Yeah.
the down payment, right? So it's a strict rule of Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah.
And so this allows the government to help you. You're allowed to have your parents help you, certain other family members help you, and the government.
All right. Well, so I'm curious as to how lenders will respond to this.
Yeah.
Because now a lender's going like, oh, you're putting down 17.5%, but that other 2.5% is coming from the government. Does that count as a 20%? How does PMI go if you're going to get that credit? So there's going to be some fuzzy, weird stuff going
Well,
on
you
there.
still have to have the
with the
cash up
lenders.
front for a tax credit,
You
right?
do.
Yeah.
But how does the lenders deal with that? Because there's probably some things we're not thinking about that
Yeah.
the lenders are going to be like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's not moving the needle that much, so we'll see. Because you
Yeah.
could imagine someone going like, well, I'm just going to put in $15,000 for my down payment, and then they get all that back. How does the lender feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, they want to make sure you're solvent even without that tax credit back, right?
That's right.
Okay, so now moving on to what's the difference between a tax credit and a grant?
Okay, so a grant is just like a check, right? So the money that you've been getting from the government for, like if you have kids or COVID payments, rent assistance, any of that, that's like a grant. Just like, the check with the United States Treasury, it's all got the multicolors and the Statue of Liberty on it. That's what a grant is. So in this case, there's a separate program. It's not part of the tax code.
The Down Payment Towards Equity Act.
Okay, like super unoriginal. Sounds like a government title. Act, right?
Government title if I ever heard one.
It's not even like the Sky is Full of Fairies Act, right? Like they always give it a fun name that like everyone
Unicorns and Rainbows
must
Act.
love, right? Yeah, the Unicorns and Rainbows Act. It's like the $20,000 Act, right? So if you qualify, again, you've got to not owned a home for 3 years, right? So you still have to be a first-time home buyer. I think the income requirements are a little different. What are they? They're like 110?
Max 120%
Okay.
of median income.
Instead of
Which I mean, this
160.
to me means you're more likely to be, in the realm of like maybe struggling a little bit for the area.
Yeah.
You know?
But I mean, that's still pretty high. So if you're in the
Yeah,
median, you
I was
qualify.
surprised it's as high as
right?
it is.
I would think that maybe it should be even lower, but
Yeah,
it's
and
high.
it's 20K.
Yep.
Up to 25 if you have extenuating
Which
circumstances.
are undefined.
Definitely. But this is a check that they're writing you towards you putting down for your down payment. Do you know if it's paid retroactively or if it's paid beforehand?
Well, I imagine that it would have to be paid at closing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the rub. It's like, let's say the government says, okay, we're going to give you this check. Do they give it to you after you close? So you have to come up with it and you get a rebate?
It's kind of like down payment assistance, but for the
Kind
whole
of.
country.
Right.
Right?
Or do they give you a check that goes to closing, which means, hey, you have to go through a government entity to get the check, which means long closing times.
Oh yeah.
right?
Between down payment assistance programs, VA programs, FHA programs, we all know, actually FHA has gotten faster, but VA and down payment assistance, government programs, they put a wrench in whether or not you can win because they
do.
delay how fast you can close.
So if you're a seller and you've got buyers, let's say you got 3, and one of them's got this grant program and the other 2 don't, and let's say their price is better, but you're like, man, I don't want to wait 60 days for that check.
Yeah.
Then a seller might choose the other one, and then like, can you discriminate based on that?
I mean, you do whether you can or
Right,
not.
but like they could put some laws in that says like, oh, you can't discriminate based on where the income
and
is
how do you
coming
prove
from.
that? You can
right?
you can say so many other things. So
Yeah, so there's definitely some turds in the punch bowl on this one, right?
that's such a wrong analogy.
It's so raunchy, but it's so appropriate because like the intention is good, but the reality is like, hey, if you create the friction for the transaction, that extra money might not show up as well. Like it might not end up helping them. So in like a check after the fact, I think would be better.
Yeah.
But then the buyer still has to come up with it. And hey, I smell a whole new industry. Anyone want a $20,000 bridge loan based on your government check?
To be able to get it to you as long as you know the check is coming, et cetera, et
Here
cetera.
it is. Like I will give you your $20,000 bridge loan, right, from my hard money lender.
And this has
for 2 points, right? And then you give me the check later when it shows up, but I'll help you close now.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
but you can only get that money from the government and certain family members for your down payment. So
Right.
I mean, that gets into sticky land with the lenders
but
and
I can
Fannie and
see
Freddie.
like the third party lenders doing this. Like the hard money lenders are just like drooling. They're like, oh yeah, we'll give you that $20,000 because it's basically guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna get it back.
So again, first-time home buyer in this particular case is qualified as anybody who has not owned a home in the last 3 years.
Yep.
And you have to occupy the property for 60 months to have it completely forgiven.
Which is more of, it's only 4 years for the previous one.
Yeah, and this is 5 years. So, and again, just like 4 years, the total amount got knocked down by 25% per year. Now that we're at 5 years, it gets knocked down by 20% per year.
Yeah.
So, after the first year, you only owe 80%. After the second year, you only owe 60%. Like most, that's honestly very similar to a lot of down payment
assistance programs. Yeah.
assistance programs.
But even still, let's say you're in it for 3 or 4 years, it appreciates a ton, and you have to pay some of it back. So what? Like,
Yeah.
your appreciation will totally absorb all that.
Definitely. And I mean, there are lots of variables up in the air about both of these particular programs. How long it's going to take to get, whether or not you're going to be able to get it quickly enough to be able to do a close, things like that. Obviously, the tax credit you don't have to have before you close. That's an after the fact. But where are you going to get the money to bridge yourself between there and there? Do you have a family member? I mean, that gets into some sticky stuff that gets you into lending questions. You got to run all this stuff by your lender to make sure that you're not going to get your closing wrecked at the last second because your aunt decided to give you that money and that didn't qualify for a person you could take money from for your down payment until you got that kind of thing. So it's a sticky thing.
Ultimately, like, the tax law is just the government trying to tell you what to do, and so the government wants individuals to own houses still. So I'm taking that as a good sign.
Yeah.
Right, because I don't want people priced out of homes. I mean, selfishly as a real estate agent, sure, I like to be able to help people buy and sell homes.
Definitely.
But ultimately, I think that people still enjoy owning a home.
Well, and I think it's the government trying to counteract somewhat that large banks and financial institutions are buying up huge chunks of houses. Like, you're getting more income or wealth disparity in who owns homes and such.
I agree with
that. First-time home buyers are getting to be less and less of the market, and large institutional buyers are getting to be a larger chunk of the market.
We should do a separate video on this because even
That's
BlackRock,
a whole can of worms.
BlackRock buying up a bunch of homes, like, yeah, they're doing it, but the portion compared to all the homes in the nation is still very small.
True.
To me, it's
but
a hit
less
piece.
and less people are owning, I believe,
That is
based
true.
on the stats, more and more of the
true.
properties.
Yeah, ultimately-
So I appreciate that the government is trying to counteract that and such. And it remains to be seen how it will turn out, but I do think they're trying. So
Well, we will see what happens.
definitely. Thank you guys so
Hopefully
much
this
for
is
checking
useful
it
for
out.
you, and we'll see if people end up using it and whether or not it gets passed this year.
Definitely. We would love it if you gave us a like, a little bell hit, and a subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for watching.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah!